Gildan Media presents Your Coach in a Box, affordable, life-changing audio programs.
The 11 Laws of Likability. Relationship Networking. Because people do business with people they like. Written by Michelle Lederman. Narrated by Eric Sinistvet. Introduction. I used to believe I knew most of what there was to know about connecting with people and building relationships. But one day, my belief got completely upended. It happened while I was teaching one of my classes at New York University. The course was about organizational communication, and it was for business school sophomores. The students were there to learn strategic tactics for communicating effectively. Even though we covered a wide range of topics during the semester, from understanding the audience to constructing oral and written presentations, my overarching message was always the same. You must have a purpose for every communication. If you haven't established your intent, I told my students, you are wasting your time and your listeners' patience. I pounded home that message at every opportunity. Then one day I asked my class, what do you think my objective is this semester? What is my intent? A young man sitting in the front row eagerly raised his hand. With a big smile, he said, "You want us to like you." I was startled by his comment, and my answer was swift and seemingly nonchalant. "No, that's not my intent," I scoffed. "I don't really care whether you like me or not." Reflecting on the incident later, though, I realized that my response had been a smokescreen. I did want them to like me. Of course I wanted to be liked. Who doesn't? What bothered me the most was that my response to the student's comment had been so harsh and abrupt, and it was because I was uncomfortable with the accuracy of his assessment. Even if I was willing to admit that I wanted to be liked, of course I didn't want my class to know it. In my mind, someone who wanted to be liked was needy and weak, and wasn't very likable. To this day, I'm not sure if the student's comment was intended to be smart-alecky or sincere, but regardless, it had a profound impact on me. It got me thinking about likability, and not just why we want to be liked, but why we should want to be liked. That classroom incident changed the course of my work, my approach to teaching and coaching, and my own methods of networking and relationship building. Now I focus on the importance of likability, being likable, liking ourselves, and in turn, liking the people we meet. Many networking experts urge people to be strategic and deliberate to a fault, focusing on how to work a room and get in front of key people. The act of meeting people and seeking connections begins to feel like a dreaded chore. And when it feels like something you have to do rather than want to do, it's hard to motivate yourself to do it at all, let alone do it well. Contrary to what many networking experts counsel, and what I too used to believe, every interaction does not need to have an intent or a specific objective. We do not need to focus with laser-like precision on what our takeaway from a conversation will be, because building relationships is not about transactions. It's about connections. It is about creating opportunities for honest and authentic interactions, and making them advantageous for all parties involved. It's about liking and being liked. Tapping into likability doesn't mean making everything all perky and bright and constantly being happy. In some ways, it's just the opposite. Harnessing likability is about uncovering what is authentically likable in you, in the other person, in your connection. It is through the strength of what is genuine that meaningful connections build into relationships. The term networking is simply another way to think about how to start a relationship. Our relationships are our network. Whether they stem from business or personal situations, our relationships are what support us, connect us, and allow us to progress in all aspects of our lives. To fully engage the power of likability, we need to understand what it is and how it works. We are all obviously different, and that's a fact to be celebrated and embraced. What makes each of us likable is distinct to us. But the basic drivers of likability are the same for us all. I call them the 11 Laws of Likability. This book takes an in-depth look at each of these laws, breaking them down to find out how they function in both business and social settings, and how to fully incorporate them into our lives. This new likability-based paradigm for networking and building relationships minimizes moments of inauthenticity and missed opportunities. Instead, I'll show you how to uncover what is inherently likable about yourself and how to share those qualities with the people you meet to create relationships that are honest and real and that lead to win-win situations for everyone involved. By approaching your interactions through the lens of likability, you can expect to be happier, more comfortable, and more successful in establishing meaningful relationships. Even those of you who are comfortable approaching new people, generating a conversation, or asking for what you want, will benefit from shifting your traditional thinking about how to make connections. Expanding your perspectives on networking and embracing the tenets of likability can open up whole new paths to connecting with people and nurturing strong relationships. Building fruitful and lasting relationships starts with abandoning the conventional me-based thoughts that are so prevalent in the business world and so easy to slip into in our personal lives. What can this person do for me becomes, what can I do for this person? Likewise, what can I get out of the situation becomes, how does the situation benefit us all? You must shift your thinking from me to them, from work to any topic, from now to long term. Because here is the essential truth about meaningful connections. It's not about you. It's about the relationship. Part A. Before the conversation. Get real. My dad always used to say to me and my sister, "The world is a mirror." As a kid, I would repeat the phrase, but I never really thought about what he was trying to tell us. Then one day he stood me in front of a mirror and said, "Smile." I did, and the person in the mirror smiled back at me. He said, "Look angry." I gave the girl in the mirror a nasty look and got the same nasty look right back. He then sat me down and explained the lesson. What you show the world is what the world will show you. The energy you put out, the thoughts you share, are the energy that you will receive from the world, the thoughts you will hear. So true is this that I later realized there are a million sayings that express the same idea. What you give is what you get. You reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. And my favorite, karma's a bitch. Over the years, this concept has crystallized for me. As I completed my education and began building my career, I saw more than ever how the world as a mirror plays itself out in life. I noticed that whether I was working with a new client or an established colleague, the energy I brought to the situation deeply impacted it. If I was having a rough day, the encounter would be difficult. If I was feeling confident and on top of my game, the encounter would be positive and productive. My attitude at any given moment, how I thought, my assumptions about a situation, how I acted, influenced other people's first impressions of me. It was how they formed their perceptions of me, and it influenced the connection between us. The more aware I became of my own mood, the more I was able to ensure that my authentic self came through during different situations, and I was able to adjust my behavior when necessary to communicate in the most effective ways. What does it all boil down to? Some of the work of making meaningful connections and growing relationships happens before you even meet someone. Taken together, the 4 chapters in this section are about increasing our awareness of what is genuine and valuable, in short, likable about us, and discovering how the energy we bring to a situation impacts other people's perceptions of us and our ability to connect at a meaningful level. Understanding these things is the first step toward expressing our likability to others. Once we fully recognize this likability, we can harness it to create lasting, mutually positive connections with the people in our lives, whether we've known them for years or are just meeting them for the first time. Chapter 1. The Law of Authenticity. Be your authentic self. Your authentic self is who you are when you have no fear of judgment, or before the world starts pushing you around and telling you who you're supposed to be. Dr. Phil McGraw, a.k.a. Dr. Phil, psychologist and TV show host. Samuel was a mid-level manager at a prestigious New York City museum. He attended a day-long workshop I conducted on assertiveness, and during the program he barely spoke, though he did take copious notes. At the end of the day he hung back and waited for everyone else to leave, then approached me. He expressed his deep frustrations about feeling overwhelmed when navigating the dinners, conferences, and other business and social functions he was required to attend as a member of the museum's development team, a position to which he had recently been promoted. As he told me about his goals for the museum, his passion for his work was clear, so I was shocked when he admitted that he was thinking about quitting. He said that he thought his networking ineptitude would hurt the museum, and that therefore he was the wrong person for the job. I voiced my hunch that this networking apprehension was something he could overcome. He seemed encouraged by my words. In order to devise a plan to try to help him deal with the challenges, I needed to see him in action to better understand his unease. So he invited me to attend an upcoming fundraising event at the museum, where I could assess his handling of the situation myself. I accepted the offer. No sooner had I arrived at the event when I was suddenly jarred by a loud bark of laughter. I turned to find out who made the noise, and was startled to see that it was Samuel. I couldn't believe that the harsh, off-putting sound I just heard had come from the same mild-mannered person I'd been speaking with just a few days earlier. As the night continued, Samuel kept a brittle smile plastered on his face. Every now and then he caught my eye and raised his eyebrows to indicate he was working the crowd. But by the end of the night, he looked exhausted by the strain of the immense effort he had put forth. And that was just the problem. He had been working it, as in working at it, rather than just being, talking, listening, sharing. When we spoke about the evening afterward, he was disheartened, if not surprised, to learn that I had seen through the smile. But I was trying so hard to be engaging, he explained, to act as it seems a successful person in my position would. I know, I responded. That's the problem. When we come from an authentic, genuine place in ourselves, our efforts to connect with people work to their fullest. Our relationships develop more easily and last longer, and we feel better about the people we've brought into our lives and our work. I've spent time coaching students on how to prepare for one of the most fundamental business interactions, the job interview. I remember watching again and again as one of my students, Raj, froze while tackling the task. He had a dry sense of humor and could chat easily in casual conversation. But as soon as we'd start doing a mock interview, his personality would disappear. I tried distracting him away from being self-conscious, but the second he realized I was posing an interview question, he became stiff and formal and very, very serious. Even his word choices changed. What I tried to impress upon him, and what he finally understood, is that there is no right or wrong way to interact with people. There is no one correct way to be. What feels right for one person may feel all wrong for another. What matters most is what feels right for you. As soon as Raj started being himself in our mock interviews, he was able to think more flexibly and respond more quickly and just generally become far more engaging. His likability was coming through. Be you, be real, be authentic. What does it mean to be authentic? The particulars are different for each of us, of course, because we all have different attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, skill sets, knowledge, goals, and values. In a general sense, though, authenticity is the same for everyone. It is about being your true self. This is the law of authenticity. The real you is the best you. Being your authentic self feels natural, so much so that when you experience it, you probably don't even notice it. On the flip side, we all know it when we're not being our natural selves. We feel uncomfortable, awkward even, perhaps unconfident and stressed, and more often than not, after being in a situation where we don't feel as if we are being our true selves, we'll feel drained. There is a difference between tired and drained. Tired is a physical state, but that drained, emptied out feeling comes from the mental effort of forcing yourself to act in a way that is not natural for you, when you are doing something that doesn't feel quite right, something that feels inauthentic. What is it that goes through our minds when we are not being ourselves? Over the years, I've asked many people this question, and the most frequent answers are, I don't like this situation, but I'm trying to be polite about it. I don't like this person, but I'm trying to act in an appropriate way. I need to act more like a successful person does. If people don't respond positive to me, at least I'll have an excuse if I don't act like myself. I'm uncomfortable and don't know what to do about it. And what is consistent about all these responses? They either represent things we feel we should do, or a general fear of feeling vulnerable. We put on a false face when, for whatever reasons, we dread a situation, or feel we are not up to it. Authenticity is not just the subject of this first chapter. It is the guiding principle of the book. As you listen to the other chapters, you will discover that authenticity is woven into all the other laws. It is the keystone to likability, because it gets at its essence. The real you is the best you, and it's the most powerful tool for forming real connections. Live the law. When am I me? To start identifying in an explicit way what it means to be your authentic self, pay attention to how you feel at the beginning of a new interaction and how you feel at the end of it. If you experience a sense of dread, stop and ask yourself, exactly what is it that provokes the dread? Is it a person, the task at hand, the environment? If you experience ease, again ask yourself, what is it about the circumstances that allow me to feel relaxed? Whatever your internal responses to a situation, analyze what they were and why you had them. Your answers should reveal information about the kinds of experiences that prompt you to shy away from representing your true self, and those in which you feel effortlessly authentic. Use these perceptions about what feels naturally right and true as your home-based knowledge, returning to it when you need to reconnect with what authenticity means for you. Why authenticity matters. Let's go back to Samuel for a minute. When he first spoke to me about the museum's fundraising efforts and the expansion plans behind them, he conveyed his excitement in a genuine, forthright way. His sincerity truly moved me. But a few days later, when I saw him at an actual museum event, it was clear from his plastered-on smile and barking laugh that something about the situation made him deeply uncomfortable. As a result, his real passion for his job and his commitment to the museum were not being conveyed to the very people, the potential donors, he needed to reach. Authenticity is who you are, your honest reactions, your natural energy. Sharing what is real about you is the key to building real relationships with others. When you show your authentic self, people will respond in kind, laying the bedrock for mutual understanding, connections, and growth. How do you do it? The beauty of the law of authenticity is in its simplicity. Don't try. Just be. Of course, embracing this simple truth can be easier said than done. In our fast-paced lives, we tend to tear through situations without giving them much thought, and so we might not even be aware of when we are and aren't being authentic. Even when we realize we are not genuinely being ourselves, when we are faking an attitude that we think is better than the one we truly feel, or sleepwalking through a situation because we think we don't have time to slow down and be fully present, it can be difficult to stop these behaviors. But the secret is to just stop trying to be who you think you should be, whether that's the too busy for the small stuff boss or the acquiescent new hire who doesn't feel quite comfortable giving opinions. Quit monitoring or premeditating your actions. Don't think, just be. In my rare downtime, my guilty pleasure is watching reality TV shows. So many of them are such primal struggles between personality types, and I find it fascinating to see the dramas play out. When I think about why I root for certain contestants and not others, the answer is always the same. The characters I'm drawn to are being real. On one show, there was the contestant who spoke a mile a minute, a trait that could sometimes be annoying. She knew she had this trait and tried to manage it, but she inevitably wound up babbling rapidly and excitedly in the end. even though some of the other contestants were irritated by her chattering, because this quality was a natural part of her, and because she accepted it and had a sense of humor about it. It was part of her authentic charm. On another show, there was a pretty girl who at first seemed like she'd be the stuck-up ice queen, the obvious target of envy and attention, who'd polarize the whole group. It turned out, though, that she was a total goofball. She let her goofiness come out naturally, and was completely okay with it, and on top of it, she was unself-conscious about her good looks. This combination made her entirely likable. After I debriefed Samuel about his inauthentic behavior at the museum event, I continued coaching him on how to identify his weaknesses and harness his strengths when faced with similar situations. During one of our most useful exercises, we reflected on how children often don't censor their behavior, and their authentic selves naturally shine through. I shared a story about a friend of mine who had been a principal at an elementary school and who sported a rather shockingly unnatural head of red hair. She could always tell what the children thought of her hairdos because they would just blurt it right out. "I like your new hair color. It matches my raincoat," they'd say. Or, "Why did you do that to your hair?" Any time she told these stories, she beamed in awe at the kids' raw honesty. Granted, Samuel and I weren't aiming for such childlike honesty that he'd be howling in laughter at the sight of a museum patron's kooky hat, but we were trying to reconnect with that unfettered experience of being a child, before the adult in us started modifying itself based on what it thought the bigger world wanted. We were trying to think back on a time that preceded grown-up responsibilities and concerns, to a time when our emotions, intentions, and behaviors were largely unfiltered. Once Samuel was able to reconnect with what naturally made him feel at ease, he realized that although he dreaded being in a large crowd and feeling the need to be the life of the party, he was completely comfortable talking one-on-one or in very small groups. And under these conditions, he could easily engage patrons and potential patrons in meaningful discussions about the museum. Live the law, the authenticity test. When you're in a situation that is making you feel uncomfortable or disconnected, take a moment to ask yourself, am I being me? If the answer is yes, terrific, forge on. Sometimes feeling disconnected just means that you need to refocus your attention to reconnect in a genuine way, and your discomfort with the situation may stem from pushing yourself in a positive way. Under these circumstances, feeling uncomfortable is being authentic. But if your answer to the question is no, then your next question needs to be, why? Are you actively changing your behavior because of how you think you should act? Is there something about the situation that makes you feel nervous, or inadequate, or unprepared? Take a deep breath and reconnect with that part of you that feels authentic and honest. Ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? You'll find that usually the answer isn't that bad. Remind yourself what you can contribute to the situation. Conveying your genuine self will ground you regardless of outcome. Make the friends you want to make. On day one of my first year of business school, my classmates and I were divided into groups of 65 people, called clusters. The members of a cluster share every single class for the first year, so naturally cliques form. My cluster coalesced around a few subgroups that were delineated by commonalities such as geographic background, financial upbringing, or preferred career path. The two groups with which I found myself most involved revolved around a guy from Boston and one from Brooklyn. The Boston group was the polo shirt and khaki pants crowd. Their mannerisms and humor were more refined and formal, and they appeared to enjoy an elite way of life, with seemingly endless social and business connections. Then there was the Brooklyn crew epitomized by a Brooklyn boy named Dean, a.k.a. Dino, decidedly not refined and proud of it. They hadn't had as many advantages growing up as the Boston gang had, and they were louder, rowdier, often bantering back and forth in a hilarious and off-color way. There was a clear distinction between the two groups, but both were friendly toward me. I liked people in both circles, and could have gravitated toward either. Perhaps if I had been thinking strictly about which group could do more for me, I would have made it an objective to become part of the elite wealthy group. I probably would have gained access to extremely useful contacts, and I definitely would have been invited to some great vacations in the Hamptons. But something about the group's refined tone didn't quite jibe with my natural personality. When I hung out with the Boston crowd, I found myself feeling as if I had to censor my boisterous, extroverted nature. The relationships I had with that group felt a bit forced and tenuous at times. When I spent time with the Brooklyn group, I found that I was simply more comfortable, happier, and relaxed. I still consider many from the Boston group friends. However, the Brooklyn relationships grew much stronger, simply because I could just be myself. When I started spending time with Brooklyn Dino's gang, I wasn't looking for anything beyond friendships and shared interests. Yet the relationships I developed back then continue to enrich my life and my work. Years later, when I called Dino to tell him that I'd been laid off, I was reaching out as a friend. I didn't expect his response to be, "Come work here," which is exactly what I did, less than 1 week after that call. People from the Brooklyn group are more than friends. They have become important clients, colleagues, referrals, and sources of information for me, both professionally and personally. And I wasn't looking for any of these outcomes when I befriended them. So here's the point. Cultivate the connections that you want to have, not the ones you think you should have. Build relationships with the people you enjoy, based on your authentic experiences of them. That is, when you are being your authentic you. The rest will follow. The network that you create is the one that will sustain you. Live the law. Do it, reframe it, or delete it. When you make the choices you want to make, not the ones you think you should make, you allow your authentic self to emerge. It's not just about choosing the situations you want to partake in, but also about deciding how to respond to events once they are in motion. There are 4 basic attitudes that we bring to each situation, and they can reaffirm what is authentic for us, or help us readjust our approaches to let the authentic in. Get to. This is how you think about the things that make you feel genuinely giddy, alert, and excited. Want to. These are the things that you freely choose to do, even though choosing and achieving them is not always easy. Have to. These are the things you dread, even though they must be done. Should. These are the things that society, your company, or some other outside force seems to think it would be good for you to do. And even though you may agree with those notions, the things in this category are not ones you want to do, but rather ones you feel obligated to do. To put these attitudes to the test, choose anything from your to-do list or your upcoming calendar of events, and then quickly, without thinking about it, jot down the attitude that most fits how you feel about the task. Get to, want to, have to, or should. You'll be surprised by how much this simple exercise reveals. For instance, if you have an upcoming speaking engagement at a local high school, you could find yourself thinking, "I get to speak to 400 lively teenagers," or "I have to speak to 400 rowdy teenagers." Same situation, different attitudes. Once you know what your attitude is, you can consider your options and decide what to do about it. Option 1. Do it. If you have a get to or want to attitude toward a situation, then choosing to do it is easy. If your attitude is have to or should, you may still need to figure out how to get it done, if the task is important enough, even if the authentic desire to do it isn't really there. Under these circumstances, seek a way to accomplish the task that will let you stay true to yourself. In Samuel's case, he has to not only attend fundraisers, but also mingle with guests. This is a key part of his job, regardless of how uncomfortable it makes him. But instead of trying to be the life of the party and imposing an unnatural role on himself, he now opts to talk with smaller groups, an approach that makes him both more comfortable and much more effective. He has taken a have-to job assignment and found ways to do it while remaining authentic and real. Option 2. Reframe it. Sometimes it's possible, and powerful, to take a have-to or should situation and approach it from a new angle, literally changing the way you view it. For instance, if Samuel's original attitude toward a party was, I have to attend the fundraiser and mingle with guests. He could reframe it by saying, I want to tell people about all the amazing things the museum has planned. By reframing a difficult or dreaded situation, you can focus on the aspects of it that make you feel good and energized, recasting it as a get to or want to. Option 3, delete it. It's not always possible to just hit delete on something you don't want to do. There are things that simply must get done, and in those cases, you need to do them with as much presence as possible. But before you resign yourself to suffering through absolutely every have to or should situation, take a good second look at them. Often we have so deeply bought into the have to or should mentality that it dominates our thinking and clouds our true selves to the point where we end up bowing to the pressure. But if you see that a have to or should task isn't actually necessary, and that completing it would mean just going through the motions, then delete it from your list. If you can't greet the task with authentic and positive energy, you are not making the best use of your time or yourself. Good news for the introverts. Introverts usually think that making connections and building relationships is something that comes more naturally for extroverts. The average extrovert probably wouldn't agree or disagree with this belief. The extrovert simply wouldn't think about it, because extroverts are often too busy being themselves to stop and analyze what they're doing. Contrary to what introverts might think, extroverts face their own challenges connecting. This topic is examined in greater detail in Chapter 3. But for now, introverts should know that they can feel completely at ease in business and social situations too, and that being introverted can be a strength. Introverts are often naturally equipped to initiate connections because they tend to be good listeners. If you are an introvert, the key is to listen to your own rhythms. Don't try to emulate your wildly gregarious colleagues. Instead, pay attention to what makes you comfortable. Do you get tired after a long night of chit-chat? It's okay to leave a function on the early side, to connect with whomever you need to, and then bow out before the shindig dies down. When you are part of a group conversation, do you prefer to listen to others and only speak up when you have something to say? Then by all means do just that. It's entirely fine. In terms of behaviors, whatever you decide feels authentic and true is what is okay. My friend Julie is an introvert and normally quite shy. When a guy she'd been dating, and really liked, invited her to dinner to meet his parents, she told me that she smilingly accepted, but inside she felt totally nauseous. How am I going to get through this dinner? She asked me. What should I do? When I answered, what about just being yourself? She looked at me as if I had 10 heads. Clearly, that wasn't something she felt would come naturally to her in the situation. She was worried that she might not live up to his parents' expectations, and she didn't know how to come across as the perfect girlfriend. If you feel like being quiet and waiting for someone else to start the conversation, wait. You're allowed, I said. A light went on in her eyes, as if suddenly understanding that she could give herself permission to just be herself. The next time I checked in with her, I asked how the dinner had gone. It was actually fine, she said calmly. We may not have become super close in the first meeting, but I didn't feel like an idiot for being shy. To be honest, it was a revelation for me. I realized that being shy is no big deal. I don't have to struggle to cover it up. I can accept myself for it and be okay in new situations, even if they're still a bit uncomfortable. When you need to fake it, make it real. Sometimes we find ourselves in situations with people we simply don't like, for whatever reasons. In non-professional settings, these situations can be straightforward to deal with, because often all you have to do is just minimize contact with that person. In business settings, though, these situations can be more of a challenge. When faced with a difficult colleague, how do you change a contentious dynamic into a productive one? For me, these challenges are often thorniest in the realm of performance appraisals. Almost as soon as I started managing direct reports in my career, I realized there would be times when I'd have to review troublesome colleagues who angered me because they were underperforming, or frustrated me because their poor social skills made it tough for everyone else to work with them. But how could I evaluate their performance in a way that would enhance the professional environment, not damage it. My first full-time job was at an accounting firm. During my second year, I was managing an auditing team that included a young guy named Kevin. And Kevin just didn't get it. The demands of the project were intense, and the time frame was tight, so it was important that everyone perform optimally. Still, at the end of each round of work, there would be numerous tasks that Kevin had messed up, and the rest of us had to put in a good amount of extra time cleaning up after him. Needless to say, this made me extremely frustrated. At the end of the audit, I had to give Kevin a performance review. I was angry about the extra work he caused for me and others, but I couldn't go into the performance review feeling bitter about him, because that would have demonstrated poor management skills and not contributed anything positive to the situation. So what did I do? After much grappling and some sleepless nights, I finally found the good. I thought extensively about the conundrum of Kevin, and realized that although he did have some deficits, if I was going to be honest, he also had some incredible strengths. He came to the office every day with a smile on his face, and he had established the best rapport of any of us with a client. If pieces of information needed to be procured, Kevin was always the first one to be able to get them. So I went into Kevin's review with both the pluses and minuses of his performance in mind, and we were able to discuss them honestly. Through this open dialogue, we realized that there were things about his current situation that didn't feel right for him either. So we devised a work plan that would keep him in the company, but get him trained in a department that was a better fit for him. We instituted the plan, and his professional life thrived. That was a powerful lesson for me. It taught me that an important part of being authentic is staying open to finding what makes others authentic as well. Despite my initial resistance and doubts, I found a way to connect with Kevin's authentic assets and strengths, and this benefited us both. Live the law. Find the good. Sometimes we're in situations where we have to deal with people we may not like. Our gut reaction may be to try hiding our true feelings, while in our minds we fume about how irritating the person in question is. The problem, of course, is that these attempts to hide our true feelings require us to be fake, and more often than not, such behaviors are completely transparent. For goodness sake, when dealing with a difficult acquaintance or colleague, don't plaster on a forced smile, or get all sugary sweet trying to hide your venom, and don't try to ignore someone who gets under your skin. Instead, find the good. Often, people who have qualities opposite from ours make us uncomfortable, and conversely, people who are too similar to us can make us flinch. Both these situations create great opportunities for appreciating ourselves and those around us. Can you find compassion and understanding for the person whose strengths might be your own weaknesses? Can you find compassion and understanding for the person who reflects things back to you about yourself that you'd rather not face? Just as importantly, in either situation, can you find compassion and understanding for yourself? With unbiased eyes, look at the person who's under your skin and find something that you can admire or appreciate. Identifying these traits will transform your experience of that person, and your conversational ease and more relaxed body language will come from an authentic place. You don't need to become best friends with a person, but you don't need to keep acting in ways that might create or exacerbate a bad situation either. When you can focus on what you truly do appreciate about other people, their likability, and yours, will naturally increase. The networking application. Being authentic is not a permission slip to be rude, obnoxious, or inappropriate. It means connecting with your true self and letting it shine through so that others can connect with you too. It means listening to your inner dialogue and internally noting your initial, unfiltered responses to things. It also means taking situations that seem daunting, uncomfortable, or just plain difficult, and finding ways to approach them with a true, engaged you. Is there a networking event you are dreading, but feel you should attend? If it's something you should, but don't have to do, delete it, and let yourself off the hook. If it is in fact imperative that you attend the event, reframe it so that you are attending it your way, converting it into something you want to do, or are happy to get to do. Think about Samuel. He reframed his predicament of dreading his employer's fundraising events by focusing on smaller groups at those events, not only setting up situations for himself that felt more natural, but also creating opportunities for real communication. Being authentic will get you where you need and want to go, and will be your path to building the most meaningful and enriching connections with others. Refresh your memory. The law of authenticity. The real you is the best you. Be your true self. The right way to be is what feels right for you, whether that's leaving an event early or staying all night, being the life of the party or mingling in smaller groups. Do what feels authentic for you, and people will respond positively. Make the connections you want to make. The relationships you genuinely care about are the ones that will form the strongest network you can build. Do it, reframe it, or delete it. Understand your choices and adjust your attitudes to reflect your authentic self. When there are things you have to or should do, convert them into things you get to or want to do. In other words, look for something in the situation that feels real and more acceptable to you. If there are any have-tos or shoulds that aren't imperative, delete them. You have choices. When you need to fake it, make it real. Finding the good in difficult situations or personalities allows for more productive and positive interactions. Chapter 2. The Law of Self-Image. An individual's self-concept is the core of his personality. It affects every aspect of human behavior, the ability to learn, the capacity to grow and change. A strong, positive self-image is the best possible preparation for success in life. Dr. Joyce Brothers, psychologist. There is one particular client, Sandy, who stands out for me from my days as a career coach. Even though the details of her story were, of course, unique to her, the fears she had about her professional life were representative of the basic fears and struggles of many of my clients, especially those faced with reinventing themselves mid-career due to a poor economy, or those returning to the workforce after many years away. Sandy was a smart, attractive, college-educated woman who was in her early 50s when we started working together. She had spent most of the previous 20 years living in a small Midwestern town, raising 4 children, while her husband held down the same job he'd had since before the kids were born. When her husband got laid off, Sandy found herself needing to return to the workplace for the first time in nearly 2 decades. She timidly entered my office and waited for permission before taking a seat. As I reached for her resume, the look on her face was a mixture of fear and desperation, with just the slightest glimmer of hope. I could almost hear her thoughts. I am a lost cause, but maybe you can fix me. After only a few moments of conversation, she blurted out, "I have a college degree, but it's been years since my last job outside the home, and now I'm over 50. The statement was somewhere between a confession and an apology. She explained that before her children were born, she'd worked as a services coordinator for a major nonprofit. But nowadays she felt as if she had no skills to offer in a workplace environment. As our conversation continued, her body language and tone of voice, even more than her words, revealed how she felt about herself. She sat compactly in the chair, as if she were afraid to take up too much space, and she had trouble maintaining eye contact with me. Her voice was hushed and sounded resigned. But what I heard Sandy screaming loud and clear was, "I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. Everyone else is more qualified than me." Realizing how her poor self-image must be affecting her job search, I said, "Let's forget about what you haven't done and talk about what you have done." She shifted in her seat and sat up a little straighter, then began recounting some of the ways she'd been involved in her children's schools. She talked about her work with the PTA and how she had served as the parent liaison for several of her children's classes. Her pride in these tasks was clear, and she actually beamed when she explained how she had never missed a game or a dance recital. She grew animated when she described how expertly she coordinated the family schedules, ensuring that everyone was always on time. At the end of each anecdote, though, she would shrug off my enthusiasm, minimizing her contributions with such responses as, it was not really a big deal, or, well, that's just what moms do. The going was at times arduous, because Sandy's lack of belief in her professional worth was deeply entrenched, but she was committed to the process. Slowly but surely, we outlined how the skills she developed in the past few decades could be applied to the workplace, and she began to see, and even more important, believe in her value. As a professor at a leading business school, I strive to instill in my students a few key tenets. Chief among them is that perception is reality. I know that this maxim may sound cliché, but it is also unequivocally true. If the ways you perceive other people become your reality about them, then how you perceive yourself is your reality about you. What you believe about your strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, and skills is what you transmit to the outside world. A few years ago, I had a part-time MBA student named Dave, who was a tax controller in his day job. Whenever we did class presentations, Dave was unfailingly enthusiastic about and supportive of his fellow students, pointing out the positive aspects of a presentation, even when it had been less than stellar. But when it came to his own performance, Dave had nothing but harsh self-criticism. The rest of his coursework was strong, but he stumbled when it came to giving his presentation to the group. He simply believed that he couldn't do it well. The good news is that because our perceptions of ourselves create our realities, we have the power to change these perceptions in wholly positive ways. For Dave, it took viewing several videos of himself making a presentation to realize that he didn't look as nervous as he felt. I have since received an exuberant email from Dave, telling me that at the last minute he had to fill in for a senior colleague and deliver a presentation to an important client. He was extremely nervous going into the meeting, but he worked hard to prepare and was able to deliver the presentation in a confident manner that impressed the client as well as his boss. I kept remembering how nervous I was in your class while presenting, but that I looked and sounded all right on camera. And that's what got me through it, he wrote to me, adding, and I even remembered to smile. Dave had changed his perception of his own reality, and his positive self-image was the conduit for strong connection and communication in a crucial situation. You have to like you first. To make meaningful connections in an authentic way, you have to project the best parts of your true self. In other words, before you expect others to like you, you have to like you. That is the law of self-image. Many of us are aware of our basic strengths and can often exude confidence in a variety of situations. But even the most self-assured among us have our moments of self-doubt. The trick is learning how to work through them. One top executive I know confided to me that it took him years to feel as if he was really worthy of playing with the big dogs. He recounted how, as he rose up the corporate ladder, he would often find himself sitting in a meeting, looking around and thinking, wow, my colleagues are really on top of their game. Can I hold my own with them? Each time, he took these moments of self-doubt as a challenge to reassess his value and worth and strengthen his self-image by reconnecting with what he knew he could contribute to his workplace, not what he couldn't. Over time, he trained himself to embody this awareness of his assets. His career thrived apace with his positive self-image. Most of us are much harder on ourselves than we are on other people. We would agree that it is not right to be mean or petty or judgmental toward other people. So why is it okay when we do that to ourselves? Perception is reality, and self-image is self-perception. When we don't follow up with potential clients because we assume that they have better offers or won't switch to another business provider, when we don't pursue a new position because we assume that there are stronger candidates, we are affirming our negative assumptions as our reality. When you find yourself having self-doubting or self-sabotaging thoughts, you need to ask yourself, do I want to be right about this? Right about not landing the client or not getting the job? If your answer is no, then you need to change your reality. Why self-image matters. Before Sandy and I began our coaching sessions, she'd applied to a few jobs, but hadn't landed any first interviews. I was dismayed to learn this, but I wasn't surprised. It is all but impossible to make someone else believe in your qualifications and value if you don't first believe in them yourself. Negative self-perceptions can adversely impact our productivity, our decisions, and even, when taken to extremes, our health. So why do we hold on to negative self-perceptions? There is often something to be gained from indulging in these thought patterns. It may be an instinct to protect ourselves against failure, or to avoid repeating past mistakes, a desire not to threaten those around us by upsetting the status quo. Holding ourselves back may keep us safe, but it also means sacrificing how much we can grow and limiting what we can achieve. Creating a positive self-image doesn't mean eradicating all doubts and attaining perfection. Confidence comes from managing our self-doubts and accepting the fact that we are working on bettering our imperfections, even while appreciating these imperfections as qualities that make us unique and likable. Once, when I was riding the subway, there was a very full-figured 20-something woman in the same car as me, and when I glanced over at her, I was startled by her outrageous outfit. She looked like a 1970s disco queen, with a low-cut turquoise top, gold spiked heels, and big brash jewelry. My first thought was, what is she thinking? But then I looked at her face, and suddenly the outfit seemed entirely fetching. She stood there holding the rail, confident and calm, a sparkle in her eye, indicating that she knew she looked good, and she did. She was completely comfortable in her own skin, extra tummy rolls and all, and she was showing the world that she thought she was one hot mama. And as a result, she was one hot mama. What we think about ourselves is who we are. See the you that you already are. In the thick of our career coaching sessions, I stopped Sandy at one point and asked her flat out, "So what are you good at?" She stared at me blankly. When she didn't fill the silence, the conversation continued like this. Me: "I bet that you are very responsible." Sandy, hesitating: "Well, sure. If you ask me to do something, I get it done. I meet my deadlines." Me: "Okay, great. You are responsible. You believe that, right?" She nodded. "Now let's find another word. Tell me something else that you're good at." Sandy, thinking for a moment, then begrudgingly: "Well, I am organized. I always know where everything is, and friends frequently ask me to help them devise their own organizing systems." She watched as I added organized to our growing list. "I'm really good at that stuff. You should see my filing cabinet." Me, looking at the job description and hunting for another word. "Would you describe yourself as strategic?" Sandy, balking and rolling her eyes. "No way." Me: "Well, hold on. How do you define strategic?" Sandy, shrugging. "I don't know. I guess I picture some CEO sitting behind a desk making big corporate decisions." Me: "So would you define strategic as someone who makes important decisions that impact the well-being of others? Isn't that what you do for your family every day?" At this point, Sandy was slowly beginning to comprehend where I was going. She then told me about how she'd helped her daughter choose a college and evaluate the myriad factors that go into such a life-defining decision, and how she assisted her daughter with the scholarship applications that eventually enabled her to attend her first-choice school. At the end of this account, she laughed as the import of it all dawned on her. We added strategic to our words list. Most people aren't this determined to bring themselves down. Sandy's negative self-image was on the extreme side, to be sure, but because of that, she quite dramatically displayed what happens when negative self-perceptions start turning into positive ones. As our conversation continued, Sandy came up with more and more words that she felt truly described her, and as she did so, her entire presence was transformed. She no longer sat slouched with rounded shoulders, physically minimizing herself. She grew animated as she singled out words that she could embrace as descriptions of herself. In short, she was choosing her words. Live the law. Choose your words. This activity is about identifying the best words that define you. The resulting description of your strengths will be one that is not only true, but one you can truly believe. Here are the steps. Free write. Grab a pen and a piece of paper, and for 5 minutes, write down all the positive adjectives you can think of that describe you. Then think about how you display or embody those qualities. Don't censor yourself and don't stop writing. Just keep the pen moving the whole time. If you get stuck, rewrite the words you've already jotted down. Cast the net wide. Don't just focus on your work qualities, but on all aspects of your life. Do the kids on the soccer team that you coach always come to you when they've messed up on the field because they know you'll have a supportive, encouraging word? Do your friends enlist your help with home fix-it repairs because they know you'll not only do it, but you'll explain to them how to do it without making them feel stupid? Write it all down. When the time is up, put the pen down and read what you wrote. Then read it again. Feedback. We are often blind to our own best qualities, even when they are obvious to others around us. Gather information by asking people to describe you. Choose people who know you well, in addition to more casual acquaintances. Try out these different questions, or come up with your own. How would you describe me? What do you consider my best qualities and strengths? If you could choose just one positive word to define me, what would it be? If you are hesitant to ask such open-ended questions, you might offer an attribute for the person to agree or disagree with. And if you are unclear about or surprised by any of the responses, ask for clarification. Why did a person choose that word to describe you? Can the person give an example of a time when you embodied that word or displayed that quality? Make sure you understand the basis of the feedback. Get convinced. When given this assignment, one of my clients decided to also query people with whom he didn't get along. His reasoning? If they could name something positive about me, then I must really possess that quality. If one of these people gave him feedback that didn't resonate with him at all, he considered the source, shrugged it off, and moved on. An interesting strategy to consider. 3. Choose. Look at what you wrote about yourself against the feedback you've gathered from others, and choose the words that resonate most strongly with you. You have just chosen your words, and they are all true. Talk to yourself, but be nice. We all talk to ourselves, and when we keep telling ourselves something, we eventually begin to believe it. This is such a fundamental truth that psychologists have come up with a clinical term for it: self-talk. The concept has proved particularly useful in the field of sports psychology, and numerous studies have shown time and again that the differences between negative self-talk and positive self-talk have everything to do with how athletes perform. Negative self-talk can naturally arise when encountering obstacles, as we all know, and professional athletes are no exception to this rule. But learning how to transform these harsh thoughts into self-encouragement and positive self-talk is what makes the best athletes succeed. In one sports medicine study, Daniel Gould, Kenneth Hodge, Kirsten Peterson, and John Giannini demonstrated how winning coaches prepared their athletes for competition by modeling self-confidence and teaching athletes to convert detrimental self-criticism into empowering self-belief. In another important study, Dr. Joan A. Finn showed how positive self-talk reduces anxiety, boosts confidence, and increases performance. Thoughts such as, "I'm no good at that," "I have nothing to offer," "It's too hard, I can't do it," and "If I try it, I'll look ridiculous," become true when you play them over and over in your head in a non-stop loop. Others pick up on and believe what you project and believe about yourself. To increase your authentic likability and forge successful connections, harnessing positive self-talk is key, and the only one who can do that is you. Live the law. How nice are you to you? What is your inner voice saying to you? To find out, track it for a week, marking down every self-thought you can. How many times did you give yourself credit for something and mentally pat yourself on the back? For each instance, give yourself a point. How many times did you discourage or gang up on yourself? For each of those cases, subtract a point. If a thought started off as negative, but you were able to convert it into something positive, give yourself 2 points. At the end of the week, tally your points. Did you end the week in the positive column? Can you increase your score next week? Determine whether or not you are happy with the results. If not, get proactive about changing your perceptions and embracing your good. Be nice. Here are some ideas that can help you. Keep a success file. Every time someone says something nice about you, compliments your work, or sends an email of appreciation, write it down or print it out and put it in a folder. You may even send yourself a quick email when you remember something of which you're particularly proud. It is all too easy to forget your positive accomplishments when you're worried instead about what's wrong. Pull out the file on a regular basis and leaf through your successes to remind yourself of the good you achieve. Revisit your accomplishments. A friend of mine who is extremely successful and appears outwardly confident is in fact impacted easily by small criticisms and mistakes. When she feels as if she's getting too down on herself, she closes her office door, pulls out her journal, and writes down everything she knows she is good at, resetting her self-talk to the positive thoughts that eventually get her where she wants and needs to be. Change your tune. I have always wanted to write a book. For years I composed outlines and came up with catchy titles, but the projects never went any further than that. In my head, I had all sorts of reasons why my book writing dream couldn't come true. You don't have enough to say. It's just too hard. You don't know how. No one will buy it. I have always been self-confident, yet that didn't stop these thoughts from permeating my mind. The results of my negative self-talk? For years, I took no action at all. To get to the place where I could tackle the task, to the place where you could be sitting there, reading this text, I had to change my self-talk. It was a process of continually reminding myself that what I said to myself was entirely up to me. Along the way, I learned that changing my self-talk from negative to positive was not a Pollyanna-ish, look in the mirror and do your daily affirmations endeavor. It was a series of actionable steps that helped me reprogram my perceptions and my sense of self-ability so that I had the courage to sit down at my desk each day and face the scary blank page, regardless of the fears welling up inside me. Of course, self-doubts continued to creep in, and they still do. That is only natural. But I was able to take steps to manage my negative self-talk and the influence it had over me, which freed me to accomplish something difficult that I'd long set out to do. Similarly, Dave, my former student, had been doggedly struggling for a long while to improve his presentations performance. Once he learned to listen to the inner voices that were telling him he could speak effectively in front of a crowd, and stopped paying as much attention to the voices telling him he couldn't do it, he was able to wow the client, impress his boss, and most important, recognize his own professional growth. He wrote to me, "While I was presenting, I was able to hold an image in my head of myself as calm and confident, and that made all the difference. Now that you've gone through the exercise, lived the law, how nice are you to you, and you have a handle on the content of your negative self-messages, you can start developing the positive messages that will replace them. I've learned that 3 techniques are particularly useful in this process. 1. Be your own best friend. 2. Frame a positive picture. 3. Celebrate the small stuff. Be your own best friend. Think back to a time when you've had a cycle of negative self-thoughts running through your head, and then imagine your best friend feeling that way about himself and expressing those thoughts to you. What would you do? You would immediately start listing all your friend's wonderful qualities, so that your friend's negative self-talk could be converted from mean and detrimental to helpful and productive. Do this for yourself, too. Be your own best friend. We all have that bully who appears on our shoulders, whispering nasty self-thoughts into our ears. On the opposite shoulder sits the cheerleader, the one who believes in our worth and reminds us of our successes, strength, and goals. The next time the bully starts in on a rant, stop it in its tracks, think about what you want to hear instead, and kick the cheerleader into gear. Sandy's bully was yammering, "You are unqualified, inexperienced, and you will never get a job." With effort, she learned to counter the bully with a cheerleader, who reminded her, "You have so many skills you've gained from life experience. You are responsible, organized, and strategic in your decisions. An employer would be lucky to have you. Over time, the process gets easier. As you grow more aware of the negative self-thoughts rising up, you'll catch them earlier, pinpoint their alternatives, and become better at changing them into positive self-perceptions with powerful results. Frame a positive picture. An important corollary to countering the negative self-talk is learning how to reframe it from bad to good. The glass is either half empty or half full, and remember that whatever your perspective, it is entirely your choice. When you frame your actions around what you fear and what you think you can't do, those are the results you'll achieve. Reframing thoughts shifts your perspective from expected doom to intended success, impacting the outcomes of your decisions and actions. Embrace your possibilities, not your potential failures. You get what you expect. The process of reframing has two aspects, internal and external. Internal framing is similar to visualization, in that you picture what you want, and then mentally rehearse or practice how it might unfold. You coach yourself to think positively about your skill set, your strengths, a task you need to do. Positive thinking leads to positive outcomes. With external framing, you take your internally framed thoughts and put words to them, sharing them with others to give them validity and weight. At one point, I had a colleague named Yale who was intent on making partner at her firm, even though she'd been there for only 8 years, and the normal partner track was 13 years. Instead of giving in to the internal chorus of, "Don't be ridiculous, you'll never make partner this soon, don't waste your time," Yale put her firm belief in her abilities in the front of her mind and flat out went for it. She wasn't obnoxious or overbearing about pursuing her goal. She was consistent, determined, and assured. She didn't make partner that first year, but she did in the second, becoming the only person in more than a decade to make partner in 10 years. She had internally framed her self-thoughts and actions, and then externally framed them, keeping at it until the two were perfectly aligned. Live the law. Accentuate the positive. The words we use to describe something, whether we say them out loud or in our heads, impact how we view it. Words are the frames we put around the pictures in our minds, and framing plays a powerful role in creating self-perceptions. Choosing how we reframe our thoughts likewise impacts our actions and results. Shift your focus onto the good stuff, and the negative stuff falls away. To increase positive framing, try the following strategies. Choose the positive take on something, not the negative. It is easy to say what you are not going to do, but in the end, that is just doing nothing. Instead, state what you are going to do, creating a clear vision of the actions you intend to take. As examples, "I am working too slowly. I'll never finish this project. I should just give up." Versus, "I'm taking my time to make sure things are done correctly. I've worked really hard, and I need to take a break." Select strong, actionable verbs. The verb you choose sets the tone for the action to follow. Action verbs create clarity about your goals and intended results. "I am considering what job I may apply for," versus "I am deciding what job I will apply for." Focus on what you can do, not on what you can't. Fear of the unknown can be overwhelming, and sometimes leaves us thinking, "I can't." But uttering those two words, "I can't," is a way of giving yourself permission to give up. By stating instead what you can do, you open up opportunities for creating results. "I have never done this before and have no idea what to do. This is not going to go well." Versus, "I'm excited that I get to work on something new. I may never have done this before, but I have several resources to leverage to ensure that it goes well." Convert obstacles, challenges, and perceived failures into knowledge. Kicking yourself when something goes wrong may seem like a justified response, but it accomplishes nothing. Instead, identify what you can learn from the mistake and commit to handling things differently the next time. It took me 10 grueling years to finally get the courage to write a book. Versus, this book was written at the right time, after I had acquired the experiences necessary to make it robust. Start listening to yourself. Catching yourself in the act is the most powerful and influential time to reframe your thoughts. Just ask yourself, How else can I view this situation, this person, or this action? Celebrate the small stuff. As I've already mentioned, one of my big dreams has long been to write this book. When I first conceived of it 10 years ago, I could see the finish line, but the vastness of the work it would require to get there caused a huge dose of inertia to settle in. The project seemed so much bigger than me, and I felt incapable, overwhelmed, and not up to the task. Before I'd even begun, I wanted to quit. But then I started breaking down the process into individual steps, and suddenly I was able to embark on the journey. Step 1, settle on the book idea. Step 2, research the publishing process. Step 3, learn the components of a proposal, put out an ad for a proposal editor, and hire one. Step 4, write the chapters, and so on. I rewarded myself each time I completed a step, to mark my enormous relief and sense of accomplishment. The rewards weren't always big ones. Some were as simple as an hour of guilt-free TV watching, or a phone call to a friend. But they helped me feel good about accomplishing my goals, and excited to achieve the next ones. Somewhere along the way, my mindset changed from, I can't do this, to, yes, it's going to be difficult, but I know that I'm capable of it, and it will get done. Progress feels good, and has a profound effect on our thought patterns, and therefore on our productivity and our sense of self. Celebrate it. Fake it till you make it real. At first glance, fake it till you make it seems to counsel inauthenticity, but that's not the true point of the saying, which is why I like to clear up the confusion by using fake it till you make it real. The purpose is to try on what it might look and feel like to perceive of ourselves in new ways, or to act differently than we're accustomed to. By stretching out of our comfort zones, or as some would say, faking it, we can grow comfortable with these new modes of thought and action until they eventually become normal or real to us. When I went on my first client call with J.P. Morgan Chase, early in my career, I was still completely green. I didn't yet have a website or a company name, not to mention a business card, and I wondered how I was going to possibly convince this huge organization that I was knowledgeable and effective enough to hire. I had no track record to speak of, no real references, and I thought to myself, who am I kidding? But then I took that thought process one step further. Okay, when my self-talk. So how would I speak and carry myself if I had already been doing this job for years? I tapped into the confidence that I knew was in there, stemming from my genuine excitement about the prospect of working for this client, and all the ideas I'd already generated about how I might help the client, and I put that image firmly in my mind. Then I followed it, acting as if I was already where I was striving to be. I never would and did not lie during our initial meeting, but I did choose my words carefully, highlighting my confidence in my ability and underscoring the successful experiences, few as they were, that I already had. And I landed the client. This is the same tactic Dave used to ace his client presentation, and it's the same way Yale made partner in an unprecedented short time. Fake it till you make it real is another way of actively reframing your thoughts, and by extension your actions, decisions, and motivations. Strengthening self-image is a process, and examining the end goal is part of what helps get you there. Working from the outside in. Clothes may or may not make the man, but they are a powerful communicator of your inner state. If you wake up feeling tired and glum, and dress in baggy, shapeless clothes to maximize comfort, you transmit that glumness to the world. On mornings when you feel energized and pull on something bright and colorful, you'll notice that that energy tends to stay with you throughout the day, and that people communicate a similar energy back to you. It's a challenge to feel alert and prepared when dressed for the couch. When you dress to feel put together and sharp, other people will perceive you in this way, reflecting it back to you and strengthening the thoughts you have about yourself. Self-image is the basis for how you experience, and are experienced by, the outside world. It is directly linked to the law of perception, which is explored in Chapter 3. Refresh your memory. The law of self-image. Before you can expect others to like you, you have to like you. Perception is reality. Just as the ways you perceive other people become your reality about them, the ways you perceive yourself become your reality about you. Be nice to yourself. This isn't just a warm, fuzzy idea. It's a scientific principle. Positive self-talk paves the way for authentic productivity and success. Change your tune. Convert negative self-talk to a positive by reminding yourself regularly of your genuine accomplishments, reframing obstacles or challenges by creating clarity about your intended outcomes, and celebrating each step of the way. Fake it till you make it real. Acting as if you have already changed your thinking or achieved a desired goal is a powerful way to grow accustomed to new thought patterns and strategies. Keep acting as if until you have fully absorbed the new approach and made it real.